let's get started. Welcome everyone, SKL Leadership Training. I see some people that were here last time. Good job. Welcome. We're just going to go over some pretty basic leadership etiquette, strategy type things to keep your platoon going, keep everyone happy. Just general like what SKL expects from platoon leads, and generally speaking, it's just what you should expect from platoon leads a whole, just in the going specifically from the outlook of our outfit. We're just going to go over some very basic things, like for any of are unfamiliar with squad leading, we're going to squad descriptions, uh, smoke, and go over some of the basic armory things for brood lords and up. But before we get started, does anyone have any questions? I'll give a second. If I know Salt doesn't have a mic, so Salt, if you have any questions, just talk in platoon chat. All right, seems good. Seems good. All right, now, generally speaking, there's a lot of different platoon leaders, variants. I know some of you here are veterans, so you'll know what I'm talking about here. But when it comes to leading a platoon, you can be, generally speaking, as try hard or as casual as you like. It's completely up to preference. The only thing that SKL really requires from you is that we like to have our public platoons, so make sure that's open for everyone, and we like the platoons to very a good place for new players to exist in. Like a big focus for us is the new player experience. Someone who just sees the game randomly on Steam and decides to give it a download and logs in for the first time and just randomly gets put into to an SKL platoon. We want to make sure they have a good time. So like regardless of whether it's a tryhard platoon or a casual platoon, a lot of these tips that I'm about to give you of use to making sure that the new player experience is good. And if the new player experience is good for a new player, it's probably good for veterans too. People are always returning, people are always coming back from a massive break. So a lot of this is applicable regardless of your skill level. So first off, I want to start off with just the very basic things, squad descriptions. For any of you who have never made a squad before, this might be your first time coming to the general, because this is just general leadership training. You just would go into if you hit escape, go to social. You hit escape, go to social, and then you just look down in the bottom right. It will be grayed out for you, but whenever you form a squad, whenever someone puts you into a Charlie squad or whatever, let's just use Salt as an example. So Salt, I'm gonna drag you into Charlie squad. And then as you look down there, you will see that you need to turn the squad off of private, and then right in the middle bottom it'll say description, and you need to type in the description, and then click enable recruitment. So generally speaking, if a platoon lead says, "Hey, I need a Charlie squad lead. Do you have any volunteers?" Salt would say, "I'll do it," and then they'll be placed in the Charlie squad, and you'll generally speaking you'll be asked or be told what the tag is going to be, because a lot of people have their own custom tags. It's not always SKL public platoon. Sometimes it's different taller fonts. So if they don't tell you, make sure you ask as squad lead. Do you have any custom tags, or what would you like as the squad tag? And then you just put that in, click enable recruitment, make sure that private is off, and then functioning squad at that point. While we're on the social tab, click down the squad certs. These are not mandatory, but I would highly suggest, if you do not have them, to get all of the things in the squad certs. Request reinforcements is very useful for being a squad lead, and all of the smoke variants are great for pointing out Dundee locations and yada yada. Very good to keep like the working together. Now, regardless of whether or not you're a squad lead or a platoon lead, another tip I would give you is that to be cognizant of the fact that your mic your mic could go out like mine does all the time. So you always want to repeat your orders twice, especially if they're important orders. I see a lot of platoon leads lose a lot of cohesion because they'll go, "All right," and they don't realize it, and most often you will not realize it. So the best thing you can do is just always say, "All right, everyone, hit that U key. We're redeploying to the Bastion." All right, everyone, hit that U key. We're redeploying to the Bastion. Just say it twice. Say it quickly, and that way it catches everyone. That people, if your mic cut out, at it. If people weren't listening, I hear a lot of people say, "Sorry, I was in the middle, so I just didn't hear your." Repeat everything twice. Just make sure it's not too long-winded. You catch a lot more people, especially the newer people, because a lot of people that are BR2 or whatever might be hitting the M key to like, okay, where's this Bastion place? What? Wait, no, I already forgot what he said. What did he say? So the fact that you say it twice will catch them. And be cognizant of the fact that a lot of people don't have mics, so keep your squad chat or your platoon chat up just in case people are typing in there, because the people that can type don't want to be ignored. Another tip I would give, and I'm gonna save any more questions for later. The Q&A section can just be at the end because I'm just gonna go over some very basic things first, and then we can just have a QA session questions. But the other basic thing is just be nice, be confident. Um, Platoon leads need, or the successful ones usually are the ones that don't get tilted, that don't argue with people. Will get a much better response from everyone from a squad lead to just a random that is outfit. If you just are nice, and if someone argues with one of your decisions, you just calmly explain why you're making the decision, and 9 times out of 10, it will be fine. I mean, you're always going to have your problem person, and if the problem person persists, we can go over that in the Q&A on how to deal with problem people. But 9 times out of 10, if you're confident and if you're positive and you explain clearly your reasoning for X, Y, and Z, people won't argue with you. Most of these situations, especially in alerts, there's not one correct course of action. You can have a plan, someone else in the platoon might think your plan is wrong. Your plan's not wrong. Like there's very few situations in the game where there's one clear thing that you should do to win the alert. Like it's a very complicated matter. So don't second guess yourself. It pays a lot to be confident, and it pays a lot to just make it quickly, even if it's not necessarily the right decision. Let's see. Yeah, I already touched on this a little bit, but in regards to both being clear on what your platoon knows what is going on and what the new player is understanding, I would just say being informative is very important. You always want to explain yourself. You always want to, I'd say maybe every 10, 15 minutes, depending on how like rapid pace the platoon is, you always want to say, all right, while we're in, I don't know, we have like 2 minutes ago on split peak and we have 100% of the top here. Do any new players have any questions? Any new players that don't have a mic can put the questions in platoon chat. Is anyone confused as to what the plan is? Now's a good time to explain it. Just whenever you're at a lull, rather than just like let the platoon meander a bit, like use silence to your advantage. The new player experience is very important. So if you're at a base that still has 3 minutes left and there's nothing going on, open the floor for questions. Because a lot of the times I have found that there's always someone who is just like, yeah, I don't why are we here? Like why is there nowhere else that we could be for the next 3 minutes? And then you just explain to them how important the base is. That a lot of the time, enemy platoons will spawn in the last minute and a half to try to just storm one of the points. So we have to be here to lock it down. Or they just might have random questions about vehicles or weapons or what. All right, now very briefly, we'll go over the armory. For any of you who are brood lords, you have access to discounts, which are everything from heavy aircraft to light aircraft to support to light and heavy tanks. Use those freely. If you don't know how to use them, you just hit the M key, right click on any hex on the map that is friendly, and it'll ask you on the bottom, it'll say armory assets, and you'll just click on any of the discounts you want. I promise you, unless you are on 12 hours every day, right clicking them, will never run out unless you purposely try to make us run out. You should feel free to put a discount down in any hex that you feel like you need a discount, because the discounts keep your platoon chugging all the longer. What they do is they just make all of the vehicles of that type cost less nanites for the whole platoon, or pretty much any friendly member in the hex. Very useful. I understand that some of the Broodlords might have some hesitation with using anvils because those are kind of tricky in certain situations to get some use out of, but I would suggest you always use the disc. They're a good way to be useful, a good way to become armory. And if you want to check every now and then, you can also craft them. If you go to the outfit tab and go to the armory, just scroll all the way down to the bottom. You can see them all the way at the bottom, all the way from infantry health regen to heavy aircraft discount. They make in pods of 5. They cost 10 of the green resource. Look, right now we are maxed out on the green resource. I'll just make all everything. Just me spending 10 on all this, making it all. They all take 5 minutes. They make in pods of 5, so I'm even wasting here, but it really doesn't matter. Now, as far as the anvils go, there are 3 types of those. We have light, medium, and heavy. Lights, as it says right there, basically only will spawn a flash for you or a javelin if you're NSO. The mediums can do lightnings and ants and harassers, and
I'm
the
an
heavies
engineer.
can do
I'll repair
sunders
you.
or mag riders. So the most useful one, the one you'll probably see most often is the heavy anvil, because you can drop a sunderer in a lot of very strange locations that you would not be able to drive one. So I would advise, especially if we have a lot of the green resource, just mess around with the anvils. Obviously, I don't. You shouldn't drop 3 down in 5 minutes, but like if we have 3 up or 4 up, and we have plenty of green, just mess around with it. Like, you can drop anvils in some really interesting locations, like right straight down the elevator of a tower on most bases. Popular spot for anvils. And if you just and all you have to do is right click on the map, go to the armory assets, and just click heavy anvil, and it'll drop wherever you right clicked. Pretty simple. And then you just go up to it, decide whether you're pulling a Sunderer or a Mag Rider. In most cases, you'll be pulling a Sunderer, and then you just pretty much immediately deploy it as long as you. It's fairly simple, though it is a little bit more tricky. Anvils can be shot out of the sky if the enemy is looking,
I've got
so just be
ammo for you
careful
here.
there. And moving on, if you're above Broodlord is the Swarm Lord rank, which are basically just the full-time platoon leads, I would say. They have access to all the Citadels, the Orbital Strikes, the Steel Rains, the Colossus heavy tanks. For those of you who are not a Swarm Lord, I would just say that when you become a Swarm Lord, those are ones that you want to be fairly confident in using. They're not things that you want to mess around with too much. So I would just suggest you ask either a more experienced Swarm Lord or a higher ranking person, Swarm Lord, to just kind of mentor you on how to use them. Orbitals are expensive now, especially because they cost 15 of the purple resource. I would just say ask for advice. Generally speaking, orbitals are good if you on the concentrations of enemies out in the open. They're also good for clearing beacons or routers. They can disperse armor columns, though that's very niche kind of thing. I would just suggest ask for a Steel Rain is something that's kind of like, I like Steel Rains, but I can't say that they're not like kind of a threat. Steel Rain, a squad of 12 guys, what it does is it gives about, I think it's a minute and a half to prep. You right click the location, after the time is counted down, all the members of the squad will be ripped from wherever they are unless they're dead or in the vehicle, and they'll be drop potted down on the Steel Rain location. The problem with Steel Rain is that it seems like no matter how hard you try, 1 to 3 squad will just glitch die and basically fall to their deaths by getting out of the squad. So they're very glitchy. I would not suggest relying on them for anything, though they are pretty rapid redeploy times. The most useful of the armory assets, in my opinion, is the Citadel Shield. It's the most straightforward. It is
Take
fairly
some
cheap in the
ammunition.
blue resource, and it's also fairly easy to use. If y'all hit the M key real quick, just right click, some like kind of near that green sunderer and put a personal waypoint down. And this is the easiest way to check. Look wherever you put your personal waypoint, and see where I put mine. It says that 63 meters away. What you want to be is you just want to put a personal waypoint down wherever you want the edge of the citadel shield to be, and then go to 75 meters away from the personal waypoint. Right now, I am 75 meters of my personal point. If I drop the citadel shield down on myself, the edge of it would be where my personal waypoint. You can use that basically as a way to section off where you want to hold from where the enemy is coming from. Citadel shields you can shoot out, but they cannot shoot in. And I'm not really going to talk too much about the Colossus heavy tank because it is very, very niche in its uses, and it requires a lot of merit to start out. So if you do not already know how to pilot one, I would not fuss over piloting one. And unless someone wants to say that I missed anything crucial as far as the basics go, I think I have all the basics down. So would anyone like to ask any questions? No, no questions. Everyone understand everything? All right, cool. As far as the more in-depth things goes, as far as winning an alert or whatnot, the best thing I could tell you, and I'm not gonna go over this too much, but the best thing I can tell you is that your platoon will stay together with the morale high if you win the alert. So even if you're going fairly casual, you want to avoid any farms that are like completely against you or whatnot. If you're going for a victory in the alert, I would just say just look at the lattice lines. On some maps, it's easier than others, but look at the lattice lines. Try to find any cutoffs. Make a note of how much time is left in the alert. You don't want to do any ball busting cutoff in like the anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour 30 left of the, because if you cut off a major section of the TR or the NC and they still have like an hour ish or 45 minutes to back, they're gonna keep pushing you. If any major cutoffs, you probably want to save for the last 45 minutes. The closer to the end, the better. And that will give you the lead, and they'll basically have to spend the last 30 minutes, 45 minutes just taking back what you took cut off from them, if they even can in that situation. A lot of it's a mental game. If you cut off a massive amount of their pop or their territory in the last 30 minutes, they might just go to a farm rather than try to stop you because time left, or they could go to a different continent. A lot of it's a psychological game. Help for the question. Yeah, beacons only work for your squad, and beacons are also the only thing in the game that overrides pop. So if there's too much friendly pop in a hex, you will not be able to see sunders if you're trying to come from a different hex into it, or routers. The only thing that overrides it is beacons. Um, Beacons, I would agree, are very, very unreliable. Like, enemies hunt them religiously. Sometimes if you put a beacon up the triple stacks with a sky shield over it and just kind of group all of the platoons there, they might last a while if they're watched over. But yeah, what you're saying is pretty true, Salt. Beacons are good to get people that are lagging behind or died early in the assault back into the fight, but they should not be relied upon for like the only spawns for the like beacons with sunderers, or beacons with routers are the best. Be preferably with all three, but I mean sometimes you just have to make it work with just beacons. And in that situation, I would just make it clear to the platoon that you need to stay together because beacons are unreliable. So we need to lean on medics. In that situation, medics would be as a spawn all of their own, and like a weird spawn. Less about spawning, it's more about recursion, or about staying alive or being revived. So if you're in a situation where the enemy just has armor, but you still hold the point, and you just can't get routers in, you can't handle in any and you can only rely on beacons, I would just say everyone stay together. The platoon make sure that your other platoon members, medics, stay back, and you'll have to rely on reses at that. But I don't want to go super in depth on anything unless anyone has any questions. I'm just going to open the floor to the Q&A section. Just official. If anyone has any questions at all regarding anything leadership related, the beacons comment was a good one. If anyone has any questions at all regarding general leadership or specific leadership questions, go for it. Otherwise, I'm not gonna waste too much of your time if everyone's understanding me. Adoy, is that your smoke?
Yeah, sorry.
What's the best thing to do when you're double teamed or there's a large amount of ES pop sunken somewhere like a biolab?
Yeah, so that it's an interesting question, and it has a lot of answers. Unfortunately, a lot of it requires a good chunk of introspection on your part, depending on how late the alert you are. You might log on and inherit a platoon halfway through an alert. It really just depends. At any given moment where you feel like you were being double teamed, I would hit the M key, look at the map, and try to rewind time back 30 minutes and just try to ascertain what decision. It doesn't have to be your decision. It could have been blueberries. It could have been the TR doing something. It could have been anything. But try to figure out what might have happened to get the ball rolling again. For instance, I was in a Hassan alert just a couple hours ago, and we started the alert really strong position, but we ended up losing due to a double team. And in that situation, I would not say it was because we started the alert, even though a lot of the times that can be the case. It's more that some blueberries decided to warp gate the TR, which got a massive TR Zerg built up against us that basically just kept rolling into our territory. It was like a 96 plus going from base to base to base that was fairly unstoppable, unless we put a lot of resources into it. That is just that is just one of many possible scenarios. Starting the alert definitely do as the main beat. So that's just something you have to bear in mind. At some point after you have started the alert, you need to hold back on the aggression and just defend bases for a while. If you just keep attacking, eventually you'll overextend and you'll get cut off somewhere, or you'll get just double teamed in the last 30 minutes. Just because you can take a bunch of bases doesn't necessarily mean you should. If you're at like the 40 to 50% of the faction of population on the map, or not population, but the of bases on the map, I wouldn't shoot for 60 or 70%. I'm gonna go down to like 30% flat if you over. But it's a complicated question. There's a lot of reasons to be double teamed. It's a 1v1v1, so one of the factions inevitably is going to be double teamed. It's not always your fault. Sometimes it is your fault. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes it was avoidable. And sometimes you just need to see it coming. If the enemy gets warp gated, they're probably going to double team you. If you start the alert, you're probably going to get double teamed for a while. So you need to note the pattern of a impending double team and acquire some stronghold bases early so that you can fall back and defend said stronghold bases in the event of a double team. There are things that you can cordon off and say we cannot lose these, and then every base beyond that cordon is stuff that you are okay with losing double team. But if some cutoff starts to happen or whatever, you need to be prepared to just forget about whatever grand plans you had and just go and defend the important bases. Because the second, I promise you, the second that you can break up an enemy Zerg, it will just completely disperse to dozens of different fights all across the border. A much
Absolutely.
bigger, yeah. Like it can be hard, and you can see like, oh, there's a 96 plus in that hex. Sometimes you have to break it up. Sometimes you just have to get in the next base, get Sunday set up, get prepared for that 96 plus to roll in, and just break it. It might take 20 minutes, but once you break that 96 plus, it will disperse between 12 different fights and 12 different hexes. and will become much more manageable. So sometimes you just have to see the double team forming and do what you can to break it up.
All right.
Yeah, it was a great question. Do you feel like that answered any of it? Do you have any specific instances maybe of a double team?
No, unless you can help me make the hard choices between something like Quartz and Regent Rock in a clutch moment. But
Yeah, generally speaking, depending on the map and the warp gate is different. I would say Indar, if you're having trouble with Indar specifically, that's actually fairly easy. Um, with the Western warp gate, I would suggest you hold Quartz Ridge, Indarcom, Crossroads, and Scarred Mesa. That would be my cordon in that situation. Like I always say, if we're on the Western warp gate, we take Crossroads, Scarred Mesa, Indarcom, and Quartz Ridge, and everything beyond that we can afford to lose. But those 4 bases form 4 strong. Even if they're not stronghold bases, they are now stronghold bases in your mind. Because if they do not break through those 4 bases, they will never get into your underbelly and take anything. As far as like the northern warp gate goes, it's fairly similar. That would be Indar X, Dahaka Amp, the Palisade, NS Material, or Howling Pass. Probably Howling Pass in that case. The northern warp gate's fairly easy, but it's also a lot more fluid because there's a bunch of bases. But there's a lot of fighting around series with Indar. Regardless of what warp gate you're on, just keep keep the center alone. As long as you have the middle base that you're supposed to have. So if you're northern warp gate, as long as you have series, don't attack Crown or TI until like the last 20 minutes if you absolutely have to. If you're on the eastern warp gate, you want to keep Scarred Mesa. You want to push. Yeah, the big thing with the eastern warp gate, it's probably the weakest one on Indar. If you start there, if you're there immediately, like if you want a Hassan alert and now the new are, I would say if you're on that eastern warp gate, before you have everyone take a bathroom break or something, hit Crossroads while everyone else is taking a bathroom break. It's pretty difficult, and getting Crossroads early will save you a whole lot of headache for the alert that is to come. Got any other questions specific to Endar, or do you feel that answered?
oh, sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Any other general questions? It could be continent specific problems you've had in the past. I'm here to answer them. I'm keeping an eye on chat just in case Salt has any other questions. All right, I don't think Salt's saying anything, and if no one has any voice questions, I think I'm more or less ready to wrap up. Give one last chance for anyone to have any last second questions, but we didn't have a ton of people here, so I was able to breeze through a lot of it. Okay, cool. Thanks for coming, everyone. Stay in the platoon very briefly for me so that I can note everyone who showed up. And 1 second.
Does not compute.
Alright, I got it. Alright, everyone, thanks for coming. I will be holding another one in 2 weeks on Wednesday. And have a good night. Enjoy your alerts.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Take it easy.